chosen one. Listen, this is not just another message on your feed. This is a divine interruption. Heaven has pressed pause on everything else just to make sure this word reaches you. You have not been overlooked. You have not been abandoned. You have not been forgotten. You were hidden on purpose. There is a reason your name hasn't been called yet. Why the door hasn't opened yet. Why the recognition hasn't arrived yet. You were hidden for protection, not rejection. There's something about you the enemy saw long before you ever did. Heaven marked you before birth, and hell has hated you ever since. That's why you've felt invisible in rooms where you should have shined. That's why relationships you gave your all to walked away like you were disposable. That's why you've watched others rise while you've been buried in silence. But what men call delay, God calls preparation. You see, the anointing you carry cannot be exposed too soon. Oil that flows too early spoils. That's why God had to hide you, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because what's coming on your life demands a depth most aren't willing to endure. You've endured what most wouldn't survive. And heaven took note. There is a mystery on your life, a spiritual signature that cannot be duplicated. And while others craved the stage, God placed you in the shadows. While others ran toward applause, He led you into isolation. Because God was training a warrior, not raising a performer. He wasn't trying to get you seen. He was making you unstoppable. Stop questioning your worth because of who didn't see it. Stop doubting your calling because of doors that stayed shut. You are not behind. You are not late. You are hidden because you are sacred. David was anointed in private long before he sat on a throne. Joseph had dreams in a pit long before he stood in a palace. And Jesus himself lived 3 decades in obscurity before 3 years of ministry changed the world. So what makes you think your hiding is punishment? It's preservation. Because when you are truly chosen, God doesn't rush your unveiling. He takes His time. He cultivates the roots before revealing the fruit. The deeper the foundation, the higher the rise. And chosen one, your foundation has been carved through years of silence, tears, betrayal, and midnight prayers. God saw every night you felt invisible. He heard every whisper of doubt. And while others were building brands, you were building altars. While others chased titles, you chased truth. You didn't sell out for platforms. You stayed faithful in the unseen. That faithfulness is why the shift is here. Because God doesn't forget the ones who stay loyal in the shadows. You didn't just survive being hidden. You grew in it. You learned to pray when no one clapped. You learned to stand when no one agreed. You learned to praise when no one watched. And that is the proof that you are ready. Not everyone who is visible is valuable in the kingdom, and not everyone who is hidden is small. God hides the most valuable things: diamonds, gold, scrolls of destiny. You are one of those treasures. That's why the fight has been so fierce. That's why the battle has raged against your mind. Because darkness fears what's about to emerge. You are not coming out to blend in. You are coming out to break ground. Your hiding season was your building season. Your waiting season was your molding season. And now comes the revealing. Heaven is aligning people, places, and moments. God is turning keys you didn't even know were locked. The curtain is about to be drawn back. Not just so the world can see you, but so heaven can use you. There will be no mistaking who sent you. When you speak, chains will break. When you walk into a room, Atmospheres will shift. You were not called to be impressive, you were called to be impactful. Don't cheapen your crown by seeking quick validation. Don't sell your mantle for popularity. You are not an echo, you are a voice. You are not common, you are kingdom. This is not a coincidence. This is your appointed time. As it was declared in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2, when you walk through fire, you will not be burned. You've walked through the fire. You've walked through rejection. You've walked through loneliness. Now comes the power. Now comes the visibility. Now comes the release. Comment 999 below if you know this word found you right on time, and if this stirred your spirit. Like, share, and subscribe to stay aligned with every prophetic word sent for your journey. You are part of this remnant. You are not alone. You wondered why heaven was quiet. Why? In the deepest ache of your spirit, the silence only grew thicker. You prayed, you fasted, you cried out, yet the answers did not come. The doors stayed shut. The signs remained dim, but chosen one. Hear this. Now heaven's silence was never abandonment. It was strategy. God does not waste stillness. Every delay in your life was deliberately designed. It was not an oversight in the planet, was the plan. He was preparing the soil for something that would not just bless you, but mark generations through you. If he had answered you too soon, it would have buried you instead of building you. There's a weight to the glory you are being prepared to carry. It cannot rest on someone who needs constant confirmation. So God withheld answers not to confuse you, but to strengthen you. He taught you to trust him without evidence, to stand even when heaven seemed silent. That is the faith that moves mountains, not faith that demands signs, but faith that remains steady without them. There are prayers you thought went unheard, but in the halls of heaven, they were being archived for appointed moments. You will soon walk into rooms that feel strangely familiar, not because you've been there, but because your prayers have. This silence was your sharpening. In the natural, it looked like delay, but in the spirit, it was calibration. God was aligning your heart with his, stripping away false motives, breaking off dependency on approval, removing the idols you didn't even know you carried. And in that silence, something deeper was birthed. Hunger. A hunger not for answers but for his presence. You stopped praying just for solutions. You started praying for his will. That shift shook the spirit realm, because when a chosen one surrenders fully, heaven mobilizes around them. You were not being punished, you were being perfected. The strategic silence was also protection. There were people connected to your old season who could not handle your next. Had God released you too soon, they would have infected your promise. There were doors you begged him to open that would have destroyed you if you walked through them. So instead, he closed them without explanation. Let this settle in your soul. Unanswered prayers were sometimes the loudest yes of God's mercy. And what of the nights you wept without words? What of the moments you almost let go? They weren't unseen. They were sacred. The silence became your sanctuary, a place where heaven whispered, even when it felt like it roared nothing, where angels gathered, where the oil was crushed out of you not to destroy, but to anoint. God used the silence to train your ears, to hear what others ignore. That is why you now notice when the Spirit shifts in a room. That's why you feel what others miss. That's why your dreams are filled with symbols and your waking hours are stirred with visions. Because in the stillness, he activated the prophetic in you. Chosen one, there is a cost to this calling, and the silence was part of it. You weren't just being healed. You were being hidden from wolves, wrapped in the cocoon of divine delay. And now the silence is breaking, not just with sound, but with power. When God speaks next, it won't just be words, it will be movement, alignments, unlockings, answers that are lived, not just heard. You are stepping into the season where questions dissolve in the presence of destiny. The very things you wrestled with will bow, because heaven is no longer holding back. Not because you earned it, but because your obedience proved you were ready. The silence shaped your surrender. The surrender forged your authority. You can now carry what would have crushed you last year. And it shows. People are already starting to respond differently. Not because you said anything, but because something on you shifted. Your silence wasn't empty. It was sacred ground where angels tread. Even Jesus, the Son of God, endured silence for 30 years. Not a single miracle, not a single sermon, just preparation. Heaven does not rush what it loves, and God loves you too much to release you before your roots are ready. So when the enemy whispered, "God forgot you," he lied. When people walked away and said, "You missed your moment," they were wrong. Your moment hasn't even begun yet. The silence was heaven's way of saying, "Wait, I'm not done building you." And now the echo is changing. The silence is turning into sound, the stillness into strategy, the waiting into walking. You won't need to push doors open anymore. They will open on approach, not because of you, but because of who walks with you. Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms. That's where you've been seated, even when you felt stuck. That's where your authority has always been, even when you didn't feel it. And now, the world will see it too. Chosen one. Your pain was not pointless. It was prophetic. Every loss, every betrayal, every sleepless night, none of it was wasted. Every ounce of suffering carved something holy into your soul. Others saw you broken, but God saw you being built. What shattered you was actually shaping you for what's next. There is something heaven forges in suffering that comfort cannot produce. While others ran from the fire, you stayed in it. You didn't run when it got hard. You didn't quit when it got lonely. You stood, bleeding and broken, but unshaken. And that's what makes you dangerous to darkness. Because now your scars prophesy. They declare survival. They declare identity. They declare authority. You've been through too much not to be chosen. Too many close calls. Too many narrow escapes. Too many nights you should have lost your mind but didn't. There's no logical reason you're still standing, except that heaven intervened. Your pain was a classroom, and what you learned there can't be taught in books or bought with money. You learned how to war in silence, how to forgive what tried to kill you, how to bless people who cursed you. That's rare. That's holy. That's the kind of obedience that shifts generations. You were never weak. You were never a victim. You were in training. Chosen one. Do you realize what you carry now? You carry the anointing that comes only through suffering, the kind that causes demons to tremble, the kind that turns rooms upside down just by walking in. You've got the oil that costs, and that oil is about to pour. It will heal others. It will unlock others. It will break chains off people who never even heard your name. But your spirit will announce you before your words do. Your testimony is not just personal, it's prophetic. It carries a fire others will feel when they come near you. Some of your greatest spiritual promotions came on your worst days, because God watched how you responded when the pressure increased, and every time you chose faith over fear, obedience over revenge, praise over panacit, marked you. You've been marked by fire, marked by pain, marked by heaven. The enemy tried to convince you were cursed, but that was never a curse, was a crown being shaped in secret. And now that crown is being fitted, quietly, powerfully, permanently. You don't need applause. You've been anointed. You don't need validation. You've been verified by fire. Do not regret the pain. It was prophecy in disguise. The enemy tried to write your story with wounds, but God is rewriting it with glory. You will carry joy that doesn't make sense, peace that passes understanding, and authority that can't be taught. Why do you think you always felt different, misunderstood, out of place? Because you were never created to blend in. You were created to break through. You've been trying to fit into places you were sent to transform, trying to get along with spirits you were born to cast out, trying to be accepted by circles heaven has already removed. Stop. That tension you feel, that's divine discomfort. That's the stretching of someone who's outgrown the pain that once contained them. Chosen one. Your pain was not just for you, it was a seed. And now comes the harvest. This is the season where what hurt you will start to help you, where what nearly killed you will breathe life into others. The very thing you thought disqualified you will become the very thing God uses to qualify you. People are going to ask, "How did you survive that?" And your answer will be, "Grace taught me how to bleed without bitterness." Len, that grace is why you're still here. And now, that grace is being multiplied. Your strength isn't just emotional, it's prophetic. The enemy underestimated how dangerous your pain would become when placed in God's hands. Even Jesus, the Son of God, was called a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. His path was not paved with ease, but with obedience. And you are walking in his footsteps, carrying a cross most would have dropped long ago. But now, the oil flows. It was declared in Luke chapter 10, verse 19, "I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions." That authority is already on you. And soon, others will see it. Comment, "I choose my crown." Say it out loud and type it below, because you are no longer begging for crumbs when heaven already placed a crown on your head. Chosen one. When you walked alone, you weren't alone. When you sat in silence, heaven sat with you. Every step you took through valleys of despair, every night you cried yourself to sleep, every moment you thought no one noticed, heaven did. The loneliness you endured wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual training. You see, true anointing cannot be forged in crowds. It's birthed in caves. It's cultivated in the wilderness. When the phone stopped ringing, when friends grew distant, when people who once promised forever faded away, God was drawing you closer. It felt like abandonment, but it was alignment. Heaven had to strip away the noise so you could hear the whisper. When everything fell silent, The voice of God became louder. The silence around you wasn't punishment. It was preparation for intimacy. You were not being ignored. You were being insulated. There's a sacred solitude God reserves for his chosen ones. Moses had it on the backside of the desert. Elijah had it in a cave. David had it in the fields. Jesus had it in the garden. So why are you surprised you had it too? The walk alone taught you to lean not on man, but on God. You stopped searching for validation from voices that didn't carry your calling. You learned to stand without applause, to worship without a stage, to believe even when the room was empty. That's power. That's maturity. That's favor. Heaven doesn't promote people who chase platforms. Heaven promotes those who endure the process. And your process has been brutal because your promise is that big. The calling on your life is weighty. That's why the isolation was heavy. But here's the divine mystery. While you thought you were alone, you were actually surrounded. Angels walked with you. They stood by you during every moment of collapse. You didn't lose your mind because heaven held it. You didn't collapse because angels stood around you like a fortress. You felt pressure, but what you didn't see was the protection surrounding you like a shield. You were covered. There are some battles you never saw because angels fought them before they reached your door. Some tears you cried triggered angelic assignments. You thought no one was listening, but your cry moved the throne room of heaven. Even when you sat in silence, the Spirit interceded with groans too deep for words. And now, chosen one, God is about to vindicate the seasons where you were misunderstood. The very ones who called you too intense, too spiritual, too deep will witness the power of God pouring through your life. You will not need to explain yourself. The anointing will speak. The fruit will speak. The shift in atmosphere when you enter a room will speak. You have not walked alone, you've walked covered. Now comes the confirmation. Quiet connections will surface. Divine alignments will begin. People who carry pieces of your next season are already being drawn to your spirit. Not because you marketed yourself, but because heaven announced you. You've walked through this with humility. That's why God can now raise you without it destroying you. Beloved chosen one, don't apologize for what you carry. Don't downplay your fire to make others comfortable. You are not intense, you are intentional. You are not too much, you are marked. Your presence disrupts darkness, and your walk alone only proved your authority. The crown you carry wasn't given by man, so man can't take it. And those long, lonely walks in the valley, they produced a fire that crowds can't replicate. The intimacy with God you gained in isolation is the power you'll carry into the nations. God is trusting you with visibility now because you learned how to be faithful in obscurity. This is not your reward, it's your responsibility. Carry it with reverence. Walk it out in love. And never forget, the same God who walked with you in silence will walk with you through the sound. Stay grounded. Stay hidden in Him, because the rise will be public, but the root must remain private. As Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with Him in the heavenly realms. That's where you were when you thought you were on the floor. That's where your spirit sat when your heart was breaking. You've been seated with Christ all along. And now, the world is about to see why. If this word found you, share it. Someone else is walking their valley right now, and they need to know they're not alone. Subscribe to stay connected to more divine releases. This isn't entertainment. This is an equipping. And if you feel led to sow into this flow, do it as a prophetic act of agreement with what heaven is stirring in your spirit. Because this isn't the end of your journey, it's the beginning of your rise. Chosen one. Your setback was a setup. You looked at the losses and thought you were being disqualified. You looked at the closed doors and assumed you missed your moment. You saw others rise ahead of you and whispered in your soul, "Maybe I'm forgotten." But God says today, no. You were never forgotten. You were being set up for something bigger than anything you could have imagined. Heaven doesn't waste collapse. Heaven uses it. Every disappointment, every delay, every detour, it was all working together to create a divine intersection that only God could orchestrate. You thought it was a detour. It was actually the direct route. The setback wasn't taking you off course, it was God rerouting the path so he could remove everything that would have contaminated your calling. There are things God kept from you, not because you weren't worthy, but because the blessing you're about to walk into requires clean hands, clear vision, and a refined spirit. You had to lose certain things so you could be trusted with what's coming. Don't despise the setback. It was sacred strategy. You didn't see the danger behind what you were praying for, but God did. He saw the hidden agendas. He heard the conversations when you weren't in the room. He knew what was being formed against you, and in mercy, he shut the doors. He allowed things to break apart, because if they had stayed together, they would have broken you. Sometimes the most painful no is the most powerful protection. The enemy thought the delay would break you. He thought the loss would make you quit. He thought the silence would crush your faith. But instead, it trained you. It made you sharper. It made you lean in closer to God. It built your discernment. It revealed the truth about people. And it showed you who you are when no one's watching. And that chosen one is why God is flipping the script. He's taking what was meant to shame you and using it to showcase his glory through you. The people who saw you fall are about to witness your rising, not because of vengeance, not because of pride, but because God will not allow those who endure in secret to go unrewarded in silence. You're stepping into a season of divine reversals. Where there was rejection, there will be recognition. Where there was betrayal, there will be blessing. Where there was lack, there will be overflow. And none of it will come through your effort. It will come through alignment. You are being elevated, not because you climbed the ladder, but because you surrendered at the bottom. Heaven promotes those who bow low, not those who claw high. Your setback was also a test. Would you trust him when it looked like nothing was working? Would you still praise when nothing made sense? Would you still obey when the promise felt distant? And you passed that test not perfectly, but persistently. You didn't quit. That's why you're still qualified. And here's the divine irony. What was your lowest moment will become your loudest testimony. People will ask how you made it. They'll want to know what sustained you. And your answer won't be strategy. It'll be surrender. I didn't fight my way here. I followed the voice of the Lord. That kind of testimony shakes the gates of hell. As we read in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2, when you walk through fire, you will not be burned. You didn't just walk through it. You carried something out of the flames. You came out with oil, with wisdom, with discernment, and with a weapon in your mouth. Your words now carry weight. Your prayers now carry authority. Your steps are now ordered with purpose. This is your comeback, and it's not quiet. Doors are about to open on their own. People who ignored you will come back this time with honor in their eyes. Tables that once excluded, you will now extend invitations. Not because you demanded it, but because God designed it. This is your divine rebound. And it won't make sense to those who only watched your fall, but heaven will make sure your rise is visible enough for your ego. But for God's glory, He is about to make an open show of what was done in secret. Chosen one, don't shrink now. Don't let the memory of past rejection steal the boldness of future victory. You were made for this moment. The setback was your training ground. Now comes the stage. Not for performance, but for purpose. You will speak, and chains will break. You will move, and atmospheres will shift. Because what crushed others only crowned you. And if this word stirred something deep in you, don't keep it to yourself. Like it. Share it. Make sure you're subscribed. Because these aren't just videos. This is fresh manna. Divine alignment. And if you feel led to sow into this work, do so with faith. Every offering becomes seed into your own soil of breakthrough. This isn't charity. It's covenant. Chosen one. You carry a hidden mantle. Others see the surface. But they don't see the fire burning beneath your skin. They don't see the late-night prayers, the spiritual battles, the deep wells of intercession you've dug in silence. You were never ordinary even when you tried to be. The moment you came into the earth, you were marked. The moment you said yes to God, heaven wrapped you in a mantle that man could never define. You carry something ancient, something sacred, something that frightens darkness. That's why your warfare has been different. That's why the attacks seemed disproportionate to your current status. Because the enemy wasn't fighting your present, was terrified of your future. The mantle on your life provokes resistance, but that resistance is confirmation, not condemnation. You didn't choose this. It chose you. While others were chasing likes, you were chasing the Lord. While others built brands, you were being broken and rebuilt by the Spirit. And now, that hidden mantle is about to be revealed, not through fanfare, but through fire. When you speak, something shifts. When you walk in, things align. Not because of who you are, but because of what you carry. God has trusted you with this mantle because He saw how you responded to the crushing. Others kit. You kept worshipping. Others compromised. You kept fasting. Others settled. You kept pressing. That's why you're still here. Because the mantle didn't just fall on you, it formed in you. Every layer was forged through tears, through silence, through obedience when no one was clapping. Do you understand how rare that is? Many want influence. Few want intimacy. Many crave platforms. Few endure the process. But you walked through the fire and didn't lose your faith. You endured the darkness and never let go of the light. That's why the mantle fits you now. It wasn't time before. It would have crushed you. But now, you've been tempered, shaped, refined, and heaven is placing the weight of this next season on your shoulders, not as a burden, but as a banner. The mantle isn't for show. It's for war. You're about to walk into spaces where the spirit realm responds before the natural realm does. People won't know why they feel conviction when you speak, why they weep when you pray, why they feel peace in your presence. It's not you, it's what you carry. The mantle carries heaven's breath. It disrupts hell's strategy. It carries prophetic weight. It pulls down strongholds. And it's not loud or flashy. It's subtle, holy, and undeniable. You've been asking, why do I feel this heaviness? That's the mantle resting. That's the responsibility of being chosen. It comes with burden, but also with power. It comes with warfare, but also with divine backup. And make no mistake, what's on your life now will expose what's false around you. The mantle attracts both honor and opposition. You'll find people are drawn to your light or irritated by it, and both are necessary. Light reveals. And when your mantle shows up, the fake will flee, and the hungry will follow. Don't run from that. You were given this for a reason, and God is about to place you exactly where this mantle can function without restriction. There are divine appointments coming. Doors you didn't knock on will swing wide. Platforms you didn't pursue will open, not because of ambition, but because of assignment. People won't understand how you arrived, but heaven knows exactly why. You are the answer to a prayer someone prayed in desperation. You are the fulfillment of promises made generations ago. Your yes is unlocking blessings for bloodlines. That's the power of a hidden mantle revealed at the appointed time. Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms. That is your seat even when your feet are on the battlefield. That is your identity even when your name isn't on their list. Chosen one. Don't be surprised when the mantle starts making room for itself. It's time. And if you know this mantle rests on you, comment 444 below. Chosen one. You're not losing it, you're awakening. The shaking you feel inside, the pressure building in your spirit, the sudden waves of emotion that come out of nowhere, it's not mental collapse. It's spiritual activation. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. What once lay dormant within you is being stirred. The gifts, the discernment, the visions, they're all being awakened by the hand of God. This is what happens when heaven begins to pull the veil off your destiny. For so long, you lived under the weight of expectations, of limitation, of labels others placed on you. You tried to shrink. You tried to dim your light. You tried to be normal, to just get through life like everyone else. But every attempt to blend in left you feeling more hollow, because you weren't built to fit in, you were born to disrupt. And now, the Spirit of God is disrupting you. He is shaking loose everything that is not aligned with your assignment. Friendships are falling away. Desires are shifting. Places you once felt at home in now feel uncomfortable. It's not confusion, it's clarity. It's the sign that your spirit is outgrowing your last season. You feel unstable because you're no longer standing on old ground. God has moved you in spirit, ahead of your body. You're being stretched between two realms, the now and the not yet. You've tasted the calling, but haven't fully stepped into it. You've seen the vision, but the door hasn't opened yet. That spiritual tension you feel is proof that transition is near. And here's the deeper truth. Spiritual awakening often looks like personal unraveling. Your schedule is disrupted. Your priorities shift. You start craving solitude. You lose the appetite for shallow conversations. What once entertained you now irritates you. That's the Spirit's work. He is detoxing your soul to make room for the mantle. There are gifts inside you that are being stirred. Prophetic sight, healing hands, intercessory burden, leadership, fire, it's all coming alive. You're not imagining it. You're awakening to it. You're beginning to sense things before they happen. You're feeling heaven's urgency. You're hearing instructions in your dreams. This is the realm of the called, and you are in it. This awakening also comes with sensitivity. You feel deeper. You weep quicker. You discern faster. You sense demonic presence more clearly. You pick up on spiritual atmospheres instantly. It's not because you're too much. It's because your spirit has been tuned to a higher frequency. And that sensitivity is not a weakness, it's your weapon. God is trusting you with the gift of sight. Not physical sight, but prophetic vision. You see what others ignore. You hear what others dismiss. That's why you've been misunderstood. That's why people have tried to explain away your fire. Because what they call overreacting, heaven calls early warning. You are the watchman on the wall. You're the one who senses the shift before it manifests. You're the one who sees the storm before it arrives. You've been given this grace so others can be protected through your obedience. But it hasn't been easy. This level of awakening comes with a cost. Your emotions feel heavier. Your dreams feel more intense. Your spirit doesn't rest like it used to. You're always on, always perceiving. But don't grow weary. You're not malfunctioning. You're becoming who you were created to be. Every part of your spirit is waking up because heaven is ready to use you in fullness. It was declared in Luke chapter 10, verse 19. I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions. That authority is not something you acquire, it's something you awaken to. And you're awakening now. You've been authorized to move in spiritual dimensions most never access. You've been called to confront what others avoid. You've been chosen to step where others fear. You don't need another sign. You don't need more approval. What's happening in you is the sign. Your obedience is the permission. And now that your spirit is awakened, there's no going back. You won't be able to tolerate compromise. You won't be able to endure counterfeit. You won't be able to sit still in places where God is not moving. Your spirit will demand alignment, and your future will require it. This is the beginning of your becoming. Chosen one. They tried to silence you, but God is amplifying you. Every time you were overlooked, every time they changed the subject when you spoke, every time your voice trembled under the weight of not being heard, God was watching. He saw how you kept showing up, how you kept speaking life, even when life wasn't speaking back, and heaven recorded it. Your voice was never insignificant. It was simply out of season. God has a precise rhythm. He doesn't raise voices based on popularity. He raises voices based on purpose. And now, your time has come. Not for attention, but for assignment. You are being amplified in the spirit realm. The words you speak now carry a frequency that cuts through noise and confusion. You're not just talking anymore, you're declaring, and declarations shift things. This is why the enemy fought your voice so violently. He tried to convince you you had nothing to say, that no one would listen, that you were too broken, too unqualified, too wounded to carry a message. But what he didn't anticipate was the oil that would come from your breaking. Your wounds became wells. Your silence became strength. You didn't just survive being muted, you learned how to carry weight in whispers. And now, God is turning up the volume on your life. You'll speak, and things will change. Not because you're louder, but because you're anchored. The amplification is not about being heard by crowds, it's about being heard in the heavens. When you pray now, it shifts. When you intercede, it breaks. When you release what God gives you, it carries impact beyond the moment. You are not just speaking, you are echoing eternity. And with this amplification comes visibility, not to promote you, but to position you. God is elevating your voice for His glory. That's why certain platforms are suddenly opening. That's why people are reaching out who never noticed before. That's why your name is being mentioned in rooms you've never entered. Because heaven is orchestrating it. And what God amplifies, no man can mute. But here this amplification also attracts opposition. Not everyone will celebrate your rise. Some will question it. Others will attempt to copy it. But your job is not to defend your calling. It's to walk in it. Don't get distracted by the noise. Focus on the frequency God has given you. Your voice is not just natural, it's spiritual. When you speak, demons remember you. You carry the sound of someone who's been through the fire and came out carrying revelation. You carry the cadence of someone who's wrestled in prayer and won. There's a difference between noise and sound, and you, chosen one, carry sound, heaven's sound. And that sound is what changes atmospheres. That's why rooms shift when you enter. That's why people open up around you without knowing why. That's why children look at you with reverence. It's not your voice, it's the mantle that speaks through you. The same voice they once mocked. God is now magnifying. The same words they once dismissed. God is now anointing. What you say now will not just be heard, it will hit. It will penetrate hardened hearts. It will awaken dead spirits. It will shatter illusions and unlock destinies, not because of your ability, but because of your surrender. You surrendered your reputation. You surrendered the need to be right. You let go of needing to be understood. And that surrender created space for spiritual authority. Now, when you speak, it's not empty. It's electric. Heaven backs your voice. This is why your tone has changed. Why your content feels heavier. Why your presence feels loaded. Because it is. You're no longer speaking from opinion. You're speaking from encounter. And encounter carries evidence. You've been in the secret place. That's what makes you dangerous in the open place. Even Jesus, before stepping into public ministry, spent time in the wilderness. The silence before the sound. The crushing before the clarity. That's been your life. But now, the wilderness has served its purpose. Your voice is coming out of it with thunder. God is using your voice to call others out of darkness, to break generational confusion, to rewire thinking patterns, to build bridges between heaven and earth. That's why your tongue feels different. It's been touched by coal from the altar. You've been purified for this purpose. And don't be surprised when your words begin to travel further than your presence. People you've never met will be touched by what you release. Messages you almost deleted will become someone's breakthrough. Don't underestimate the reach of anointed words. You are stepping into a new kind of influence, one that isn't self-centered, but spirit-driven. Your voice will no longer echo traumate, will echo truth. It will carry grace, fire, wisdom, and it will bring those in spiritual slumber back to life. As we read in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2, when you walk through fire, you will not be burned. You didn't just walk through the fire, you came out a voice in the wilderness. And now, the cry of heaven is in your mouth. Declare it. Release it. Don't question it. just speak. Chosen one. The season of exposure has begun. What was done in secret is being pulled into the light, not just the wickedness of the enemy, but the hidden glory inside you. God is unveiling everything. This is not a warning rooted in fear, it is a divine revelation rooted in justice, in timing, in fulfillment. The things that tried to bury you, hide you, or confuse you are being stripped of their power. And it's not just about the world seeing the truth, it's about you finally stepping into it. Exposure is not always about others being unmasked. Sometimes it's you being revealed, not the version people created, not the image you crafted to survive, but the real, rough, prophetic you, the one God knew before you were formed in your mother's womb. This is a time of unveiling. God is tearing the veil off of things you couldn't see before. You'll begin to notice who's really for you and who's just familiar. You'll begin to discern what opportunities are doors and which ones are traps. The fog is lifting. The truth is rising. You've been asking for clarity. Here it comes. But exposure is double-edged. It reveals the real from the fake. It separates assignment from distraction. And in this season, everything that is not rooted in truth will shake. Relationships, alliances, titles, even old thought patterns will start to fall away, because God can't let you carry deception into your destiny. This is why things have felt shaky, unstable. It's not punishment, it's purification. You are being cleansed of residue from old seasons. The lies you told yourself to survive no longer serve your future. God is exposing the dust so He can breathe fresh life. Do not fear what is falling apart. Fear staying in what no longer fits. The exposure is not meant to embarrass you, it's meant to establish you. Even in Scripture, God exposed before He elevated. David was revealed before he reigned. Esther's identity was uncovered before her destiny unfolded. Jesus was baptized and publicly affirmed before miracles flowed. Exposure is heaven's announcement. This is my chosen one. Watch what I do through them. Not, you will feel it before others see it. You'll feel the pull to separate, the pull to go deeper, the need to clean out your digital space, your mental space, your relational space. That's exposure to God, showing you what's been draining you, so He can replace it with what fuels you. And yes, some exposure will feel like loss. You'll grieve the version of yourself you're leaving behind. You'll feel the absence of people who no longer belong in your orbit. You'll even question if you're being too much or too sensitive. But remember, pruning is painful before it's powerful. You are being refined, not rejected. You are being chosen, not cancelled. And the more God reveals, the more He will realign. As hidden truths come to the surface, hidden favor will follow. You'll start to see divine opportunities pop up out of nowhere. Rooms you never applied for will invite you in. The doors that once refused you will now request you. That's what happens when truth stands up, favor follows. Because when your heart aligns with God's truth, heaven accelerates your steps. No more running in circles. No more second guessing. No more false coverings. The real you, the royal, radiant, risen you's emerging. And yes, others will notice. Some will be drawn to your light. Others will flee from it. That's exposure too. The same light that guides the hungry also blinds the prideful. But don't dim your shine to comfort the counterfeit. You weren't born to blend in with deception, you were born to dismantle it. Your life is now becoming a mirror, a reflector of God's nature. When people look at you, they'll start to see what they were running from and what they were created for. That is why you had to go through the crushing, so your reflection would carry truth and not trauma. You are stepping into clarity, and it will cost you confusion. You are stepping into vision, and it will cost you illusion. You are stepping into purpose, and it will cost you pretense. Chosen one. The scales are falling. The masks are slipping. The true is rising. As we read in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2, when you walk through fire, you will not be burned. You've walked through the fire of exposure. Now, stand in the light of revelation. Type, reveal the truth. If your spirit knows this unveiling has already begun. You're not just watching it happen, you are the unveiling. Chosen one. Heaven has declared a divine emergency. This isn't just a prophetic moment, it's a divine alarm. Something in the spirit has shifted, and you felt it. You can't sleep like you used to. You can't ignore the nudge anymore. There's a sense of urgency growing in your chest. And it's not anxiety, it's awakening. Heaven is calling you to attention. You are not just wandering through life. You are being summoned, called, positioned. The things you used to brush off now weigh heavy. The things you once tolerated now irritate your spirit. You're sensing the tremble of time, the rhythm of heaven pulling you forward. That's not coincidence. That's the sound of divine emergency in your bones. Because there are things tied to your obedience, lives connected to your yes, realms awaiting your movement. This moment isn't about comfort, it's about kingdom. God is moving quickly. The seasons are accelerating. What used to take years will happen in weeks. What once felt distant is suddenly near. The door you thought you missed is swinging open again, but it won't stay open forever. This is your window. Mercy is calling your name with urgency. Grace is holding the door open, but it will not beg. The Spirit is moving, and He's not waiting for you to catch up. He's inviting you to step in, not later. Now. There's no more time for spiritual sleepwalking. You've hit snooze long enough. This divine emergency means you must move differently, pray differently, think differently. It's not about panis, it's about purpose. This is heaven's version of a siren. It's time sensitive, and it has your name on it. You've been prepared for this. Even if you don't feel ready, God never calls the comfortable. He calls the obedient, and you, chosen one, have been trained in fire. Everything you've been through was not random pain. It was prophetic preparation for right now. Don't let fear whisper that you're not equipped. You are. The oil was crushed into you. The fire baptized you. The silence trained your ears. The wilderness taught your hands to war. You don't need one more confirmation. You need to move. Because the cost of disobedience in this season is too high. Some doors don't swing back twice. Some alignements expire. Some assignments pass to the next willing heart. Don't let hesitation rob you of what heaven already signed over to you. And don't expect everyone around you to understand. Divine emergency doesn't always look dramatic on the outside. It can look like you waking up at 3 a.m., weeping without knowing why. It can look like leaving behind opportunities that looked perfect but felt wrong. It can look like being drawn to fast when no one else is. This is the nature of spiritual urgency. It's internal before it's external. And it marks you. People won't get why you've changed. Why you no longer laugh at the old jokes. Why you suddenly crave solitude. Why you spend hours in prayer when you used to scroll. But you're not here to be understood. You're here to be aligned. Heaven is calling. And when heaven calls, nothing else satisfies. Even Jesus had moments where the Spirit moved him urgently into the wilderness, into the temple, into destiny. The timing wasn't random. It was ordained, and so is yours. You were born for this divine emergency, not to panic but to activate. Your presence is not passive. Your obedience releases resources. Angels respond when you move. Breakthroughs attach to your footsteps. When you pray, strategies fall from heaven. When you worship, territory shifts. When you obey, chains break not just for you, but for others connected to your life. That's how serious this is. Your yes is not just personal, it's generational. Every delay, every procrastination, every excuse is being confronted by this urgency, because God is ready to release, but He's looking for someone to receive, and He's chosen you. It was declared in Luke chapter 10, verse 19, I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions. You're not walking into this moment defenseless. You are armored. You are anointed. You are appointed. And now, you are being activated. Don't look back. Don't slow down. Don't ask for another sign. This is the sign. This moment. This word. This quickening in your chest, it's the signal. It's divine alignment, disguised as urgency. Let this urgency push you into purpose. Let it push you to release that word. Start that assignment. Cut that tie. Leave that place. Step into that role. Let it push you to act not from fear, but from revelation, because the clock in heaven just struck now. And if this message ignited something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Like it, share it, and subscribe to stay in rhythm with what heaven is releasing. This isn't just content, it's a call, a trumpet in the Spirit. And if God moves your heart to sow into what's flowing here, do it in faith. You're not donating, you're planting into destiny. Because this divine emergency is your divine entry. Chosen one. You were born for the battle. Before you ever spoke your first word, before you took your first breath, the war had already begun. You were born into resistance. You've been surrounded by tension your whole life, or not because something's wrong with you, but because something powerful is on you. The battles didn't start when you got older. They started the moment you entered this realm, because you were born with authority. There's a reason your warfare has never been normal. There's a reason you've had to fight through things others never faced. A reason your mind has been a battlefield. A reason your family line is full of brokenness that you've been assigned to break. You didn't ask for the fight, but it's been yours since the beginning, because you carry the keys to freedom for more than just yourself. You were chosen for war, not the kind fought with fists, but with fire, with worship, with wisdom, with presence. God put something in your spirit that refuses to die, no matter what comes against it. That refusal to quit, that rising after every fall that is proof of your identity. Only warriors rise again. Only chosen ones bleed and keep walking. You were forged for this. The crushing you endured built capacity. The pressure you survived built endurance. The silence you walked through built spiritual muscle. You didn't just live through storms, you grew in them. You learned to pray in the middle of lightning. You learned to see clearly in the fog. You learned to hold your peace when everything screamed for reaction. The enemy thought you'd break. Instead, you were built. And now you're starting to realize the truth. You weren't just in a battle. You are a weapon. Your life is disruptive to darkness. Your very presence disturbs demonic systems. Not because you say the right things or look the part, but because your existence is prophetic. Your breath is a declaration. God wins here. End. Every attack against you was designed to break your voice, your mind, your belief. But instead of breaking you, it awakened something. And now the enemy knows she can't stop you. Only try to distract you. But even distraction is losing its grip. You've outgrown confusion. You've outgrown fear. You've even outgrown the need to be understood. This is the mindset of a warrior. You don't need crowds. You don't need claps. You don't need comfort. What you need is clarity, and that's what this battle gave you. You've learned what matters. You've learned what you carry. And most importantly, you've learned who carries you. Because the truth is, you've never fought alone. Heaven has fought with you. And at times, for you, there were moments when the weight should have crushed you, but angels bore you up. There were times when confusion tried to drown you, but the Spirit whispered clarity through chaos. You are not just resilient, you are reinforced. You're not just surviving, you are standing with sword in hand. And this sword is not a metaphor. It's spiritual authority. It's the word that lives in your mouth. It's the worship that breaks through atmospheres. It's the faith that doesn't flinch. You're not fighting with opinions, you're fighting with heaven's decree. That's why you win. You don't win because you know more. You win because you belong to the one who already overcame. Every victory you walk in is rooted in a greater victory that was sealed long before you arrived. You are not trying to get the win, you're enforcing it. That's why the enemy resists your movement. Every time you step forward, territory shifts. Every time you say yes, chains snap. Every time you intercede, someone else breathes again. Your obedience is a threat. You don't just change rooms, you change realms. Chosen one. Don't underestimate the magnitude of your yes. Every battle you've endured refined your focus. You no longer move emotional, you move prophetically. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer shrink, you stand. And the battlefield is shifting, not because it got easier, but because you got stronger. You carry discernment now. You know how to navigate unseen terrain. You've been trained in hardship, so favor won't ruin you. You've cried in the secret place, so public victory won't seduce you. You've been hidden so long that now exposure won't distort you. This is the hour where warriors risen not loud, not flashy, but deeply rooted. And that's you. As Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms. Your seat is not on the battlefield. Your seat is in victory. That's why you fight from authority, not for approval. That's why you can smile in storms, because your position is sealed. You may walk through valleys, but your spirit sits in triumph. You were born for the battle and you were born to win. Chosen one. You disrupt darkness without even trying. Your presence alone makes spirits nervous. Your voice, even in silence, carries weight. You've likely walked into rooms and felt tension rise without knowing why. You've spoken truth and watched people shift in their seats. That's not arrogance, it's awareness. You are a walking contradiction to everything hell tries to build. You don't conform to darkness, you confront it, not by being loud, but by being light, not by striving, but by simply existing in obedience. The moment you said yes to God, you became a living weapon, a torch in the spirit. And what most people overlook is that your resistance to compromise is spiritual warfare in disguise. You have a history of making idols nervous. You've never been someone who fit in for long. Groups tried to label you, but your spirit didn't settle. Circles tried to include you, but something in you always stayed apart. That something was God's hand. He didn't just choose you, He marked you. And that mark is recognizable in the unseen realm. Demons knew who you were before people did. That's why your battles came early. That's why your dreams were attacked as a child. That's why your peace has often been under siege. You assumed you were being punished. You weren't. You were being noticed. Hell doesn't fight what isn't threatening. You are a threat not because you try to be, but because of what lives inside you. The Spirit of God resides in you. And where that Spirit is, freedom follows. So when you show up, freedom shows up. That's why people cry around you. That's why tension breaks when you pray. That's why people confess things around you they never planned to say. You carry truth that searches hearts. And it's not because you're perfect. It's because you've been through too much not to be real. You've been broken, but you didn't bow. You've been tempted, but you didn't sell out. You faced darkness, but it didn't claim you. That integrity carries authority. Your spirit can't be imitated. There are people trying to copy your style, your sound, your strength. But what they don't realize is that your fire came through pain they never saw. They weren't there for the tears. They didn't feel the silence. They didn't war in the nights you almost gave up. What's on you can't be manufactured. It's forged, and it terrifies darkness. Not because you're loud, not because you post scriptures, but because you live them. You walk in quiet conviction. You move in humility. You carry the kind of holiness that makes people evaluate their own. And that kind of light exposes shadows. You don't have to cast out demons to disrupt them. Your presence unsettles what's unclean. That's why you lose friends for no reason. Why people get distant when you rise. It's not always jealousy, it's spiritual discomfort. Some people can't coexist with your clarity. But don't dim your light to make others feel okay in darkness. You are not being rude. You are being righteous. You're not being harsh. You're being holy. And holiness will never be comfortable to compromise. But you didn't come to make comfortable. You came to call forth. There's a fire in your bones now that won't let you go silent. You feel the difference in your prayer life, in your dreams, in your hunger. You used to scroll through distractions. Now you sit in the Word. You used to silence your convictions. Now you speak them boldly. This is transformation. And it's disrupting every demonic plan that tried to entangle you. You are a disruptor, chosen for such a time as this. Not to blend in with culture, but to confront it in love and truth. Not to shame people, but to shake them. Not to be trendy, but to be timeless. The oil you carry isn't fashionable. It's fireproof. As Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with Him in the heavenly realms. That's the source of your boldness. Not pride, but position. You speak from the seat of authority. You war from the seat of victory. And every time you take that posture, darkness loses ground. Comment 111 if you know this fire lives in you. That number isn't random, it means divine alignment. Heaven's nod that you're walking exactly where you're meant to be. Chosen one. The ones who left were meant to exit. You prayed they would stay. You begged for certain relationships to last. You clung to connections that felt like lifelines. But over time, the separation became undeniable. People you once walked closely with became strangers. Conversations that used to flow began to feel forced. Bonds that seemed unbreakable crumbled with barely a word. And it wounded you. Rejection isn't painless. It bruises the soul. It shakes your sense of worth. It causes you to question everything. Was I too much? Not enough? Did I do something wrong? But God is peeling back the lie now. Their exit wasn't your failure. It was His redirection. When you carry a calling, not everyone can stay. There are people assigned to your journey and those assigned to your past. Sometimes, the only way God can move you forward is by removing the voices that would keep you rooted in old versions of yourself. It's not personal. It's prophetic. You've outgrown rooms that could no longer contain your purpose. What once felt like home now feels suffocating. The friendships that once brought joy now bring confusion. That shift isn't Prideite's proof. Proof that you're moving into deeper waters. When God elevates your spirit, it clears your circle. Even Jesus experienced this. At one moment, He fed the multitudes. At the next, they turned and walked away. Not everyone who celebrates you can walk with you into crucifixion. Not everyone who starts with you is ordained to finish with you. Judas was necessary. Peter denied. The crowd that shouted Hosanna turned to shout, crucify him. Divine purpose often walks alongside divine departure. You're not being punished, you're being purified. There were people you loved deeply who couldn't love you the same way. People you would have bled for who couldn't even bless you. That mismatch created wounds. Yes, but it also created wisdom. You now see more clearly. You now listen more deeply. You now guard what you carry, because not everyone can be trusted with your next. Some exits were heaven's protection disguised as heartbreak. You didn't realize what you were being saved from until the clarity came. Toxic patterns, emotional manipulation, spiritual stagnation. God doesn't just protect you from danger, He protects your destiny. And He knew certain voices, if left close, would silence your progress. So He cut the cord, quietly, suddenly, unapologetically, and it hurt, but it healed. You're lighter now. You're sharper. You've stopped explaining your calling to people who were never meant to understand it. You've stopped shrinking to make others feel comfortable. That, chosen one, is freedom. And that freedom is a necessary part of your next. What's coming will require focus, purity, discernment. It will require fewer voices, not more. It will demand a circle that doesn't compete with you, but covers you. One that doesn't drain. But déposer. And the only way to create that space is to release what no longer aligns. Let them go. Bless them. But don't chase them. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You've just realized that loyalty to people cannot outweigh obedience to purpose. If they couldn't honor your journey, they were never meant to walk beside it. This is not the time to reconnect with what God cut off. Don't resurrect relationships that heaven buried. Don't try to explain your growth to those committed to misunderstanding it. The same God who removed them is the same God who is preparing new alignments, divine replacements, kingdom friendships, prophetic partnerships. But he won't release the new until you release the old. It's not that the people who left were evil. Some were simply seasonal, and their time expired. Trying to carry expired connections into fresh purpose is like trying to pour new wine into old wineskins. It only bursts. Your spirit is expanding. Your vision is stretching. Your pace is accelerating. And your circle must reflect that. You are being surrounded by those who speak the same spiritual language. Those who don't flinch at your fire. Who won't compete with your crown. Who understand your mantle. Who correct you in love and war with you in prayer. They're coming. But first, the clearing had to happen. Chosen one. You're not alone. You're being aligned. As Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms. That's your seat even if the one beside you is empty for now. You are not abandoned. You are ascending. And as you rise, what belongs to your spirit will rise to meet you. Chosen one. Don't get comfortable in the waiting room. You've been in a holding pattern for what feels like a lifetime. You've watched others get called forward while your name remains unspoken. You've prayed with expectation only to face silence. You've fasted, prophesied, praised, and yet the doors stayed closed. The rooms stayed quiet. The answers stayed distant. But even in the stillness, something sacred has been forming. The waiting room is not a punishment. It's a proving ground, a sacred space between prophecy and fulfillment, a furnace where motives are purified, where identity is tested, and where patience is stretched until it becomes trust. You haven't been idle, you've been incubated. Heaven's timing often looks like delay to impatient hearts, but to the ones who are willing to wait with worship, it's divine préparation. And you, chosen one, have waited not just with endurance, but with expectation. That has not gone unnoticed. You've chosen to remain faithful when nothing felt fair. You stayed committed when the outcome was unclear. You didn't walk away when the answers didn't come. That level of obedience writes your name in heaven's book of suddenlies. Because suddenly is how God moves when he finishes shaping the vessel. One moment, Joseph is in a prison cell. The next, he's standing before Pharaoh. One moment, Esther is just another girl in the palace. The next, she's standing in authority before a king. One moment, David is delivering bread. The next, he's delivering Israel from Goliath. You're closer than you realize. What feels like silence is the sound of heaven setting the stage. What feels like stillness is actually divine setup. You're not being ignored, you're being announced in realms your eyes haven't yet seen. And while you've been waiting, God has been working. He's been aligning the voices who will call your name. He's been setting the scene where your anointing will make sense. He's been preparing the ears that need to hear your voice, the hands that will open the door, the hearts that will recognize your oil. Do not settle in the hallway of almost. You weren't called to sit in the corner of good enough. You were created to carry kingdom. And kingdom doesn't operate by clocks, it operates by kairos, appointed time. And the time appointed for your unveiling is approaching. But be careful, what's dangerous in this season is not failure. It's settling. It's getting so comfortable in the waiting that you start to doubt the promise. It's building a life around delay and calling it peace. It's turning the temporary into permanent because you got tired of hoping. Chosen one. Hope again. Don't unpack where you were meant to pause. Don't build a house in a hallway. You're not finished. The story isn't over. The promise hasn't expired. You are still on heaven's clock. And heaven has not missed its appointment with your destiny. You don't need to chase. You don't need to strive. You just need to stay aligned. Stay in position. Keep oil in your lamp. Keep fire on your altar. Because when the shift happens, and it will happen, you won't have time to prepare. You'll need to be ready. This is why the waiting has felt long, because what's coming is weighty. You were never being delayed just for the sake of time. You were being deepened, stretched, rooted, because the next level won't sustain shallow people. The next season won't tolerate surface-level faith. What's coming demands depth. And now you have it. Now, your prayers hit different. Your worship costs more. Your discernment has grown sharper, and your feet have learned how to stand. Even when standing doesn't make sense, that's what the waiting did. It transformed you. And the version of you that is about to walk into promise isn't the version that would have wasted it. You've been processed. You've been purified. You've been prepared. So don't fall asleep now. Don't let the dullness of delay steal the sharpness of your faith. Keep watching. Keep listening. The announcement will come when you least expect it. The door will swing when your hands are raised in surrender. The invitation will arrive while you're busy serving in obscurity. That's the rhythm of heaven. It moves on surrender, not striving, on faith, not force. As we read in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2, when you walk through fire, you will not be burned. You walked through fire. Now don't fall asleep in the ashes, because your name is next. Chosen one. You are a crowned one, even if unseen. Long before anyone recognized your worth, heaven did. Before anyone saw your potential, God had already placed a crown on your spirit. You don't need man's applause to confirm what God already decided. You don't need a platform to validate your identity. You've been crowned in places no eye could see, and that crown carries authority, weight, and divine endorsement. It's easy to feel forgotten when the recognition doesn't match the responsibility. You carry so much in silence. You pray when no one's watching. You intercede without credit. You discern without being asked. And you wonder, does anyone even see this? Heaven sees. And heaven crowns in private what man refuses to acknowledge in public. The crown isn't given when they applaud, it's revealed when you endure. Every tear you sowed in secret watered the ground for your coronation. Every act of obedience paved a path for your unveiling. You didn't cheat. You didn't copy. You didn't sell out. You stayed faithful when walking away would have been easier. You chose consecration when compromise would have been more convenient. And that, chosen one, is why you're being trusted with the crown. Not because you're better than others, but because you've been broken for others. Your authority comes from pain. Your oil comes from crushing. And your crown, though invisible to some, is radiant in the spirit. There's a reason people are drawn to you without knowing why. A reason your voice shakes atmospheres. A reason your presence carries weight. You are marked, not by popularity, but by presence. The crown has been sitting on your spirit, even when your head felt bowed. And now, that crown is being revealed. This is the season where spiritual royalty rises. Not those who demanded attention, but those who carried burdens in silence. Not those who manipulated their way into rooms, but those who waited for God's whisper. You are being lifted not by man's hands, but by heaven's hand. Your elevation won't be traditional. It'll be transformational. One moment, you'll still be hidden. The next, your name will be called, your gift acknowledged, your authority honored, not in a way that strokes ego, but in a way that shifts legacy. God doesn't crown for popularity. He crowns for purpose, and your purpose is too big to remain hidden forever. The crown you wear is connected to the assignment you carry. You're not here to impress, you're here to impact. You're not here to blend in, you're here to break ground. That's why the battles were personal. That's why the silence felt unbearable. Because the crown wasn't ornamental, it was governmental. You carry a kingdom assignment, and the crown is proof that you've been entrusted, that heaven trusts your heart, that God knows you won't trade your anointing for applause, that you'll remain submitted even when promoted. But be warned, some will try to downplay your crown. They'll say, you've changed. They'll say, you're trying to be too deep. But what they don't realize is that this isn't about being impressive, it's about being obedient. The crown isn't something you wear for approval. It's something you carry as a call. And it comes with weight. It comes with responsibility, with spiritual pressure, with increased visibility. But God would not crown you if you weren't ready to carry it. The pressure is real, but so is the power. The warfare is real, but so is the favor. You're about to find that rooms you once felt overlooked in will start to shift. People will suddenly honor what they once ignored. Opportunities you thought passed you by will return with new terms. And it won't be because you chased any of it. It'll be because your crown made space for your name. As Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms. You are already seated, already crowned, already commissioned. The world is just catching up to what heaven has known all along. So walk like you're crowned, pray like you're crowned, serve like you're crowned, not with arrogance, but with awareness. You don't have time to question what God already answered. You don't have room to hide what God is revealing. And if this word bears witness with your spirit, like it, share it. Someone in your circle is still walking around like a prisoner when they've been crowned. Let them hear what God is saying through this message. If you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss the next release from heaven's throne. And if your spirit leads you to sow into this ministry, do it as a prophetic act. Not because you're paying for a word, but because you're planting into what already lives inside you. This is your season to rise, your moment to wear what you've been carrying all along. Comment, wear your crown, if you feel this word found you. Because this isn't a reminder, it's a release. Chosen one. Obedience will unlock the overflow. You've cried for breakthrough. You've fasted for open doors. You've declared promises and stood in faith. But there is one key heaven responds to with immediacy: obedience. Not the kind that moves only when it's comfortable. Not the kind that waits for full understanding. But the kind that says yes before knowing the cost. That is the obedience that stirs heaven. Obedience is not about performance, it's about posture. The posture of a heart that is surrendered, yielded, and aligned. It's what separates the called from the commissioned. Many are called, few are crowned, but fewer still are obedient in silence, in confusion, in waiting. You have walked with obedience when it made no sense. And that has built a river beneath your feet, an unseen flow of favor, power, and release. You've said yes while others negotiated. You've let go when others held tight. You've walked away from what looked like opportunity because your spirit whispered, "Not this one." That kind of obedience does not go unnoticed. It's written in heaven's archives, tracked, timed, treasured. Now, the vault is unlocking, because what you obeyed in private, heaven will honor in public. The overflow that's coming isn't just financial or physical, it's spiritual. It's clarity. It's acceleration. It's open doors that no man can shut. And all of it will flow from the single word that you've been living out. Yes. End of 4. Every act of obedience is a seed. Every surrendered moment is a foundation stone. And what looks small on earth resounds like thunder in heaven. You've sown in obedience and you will reap in authority. The overflow is not just for you. It's for your children. It's for those assigned to your voice. It's for those watching from a distance, wondering if obedience still matters. Your life will become the answer to that question. You will become the visible evidence that yes, obedience changes everything. God has been watching your heart more than your hands. He sees when you obey quietly, when you make hard choices with no applause, when you sacrifice without recognition, when you choose truth over popularity. That is the kind of obedience that opens wells of glory. It's not always pretty. It's not always celebrated. But it always produces power. There were moments you wanted to turn back. Moments when compromise looked easier. When giving in seemed more logical. When silence felt safer than obedience. But something inside you kept pulling forward. That was the Spirit. Guiding, convicting, keeping you aligned, even when your emotions warred against your spirit. That's why you're still in position, because your obedience wasn't conditional, it was covenant. You obeyed not because it was easy, but because it was right, not because it brought applause, but because it carried presence. And now, the presence you followed is about to break open provision. But it won't be provision without pressure. Overflow attracts weight. It draws eyes. It requires stewardship. That's why God waited to release it. He had to be sure you could carry it. Obedience was the test. And now, you've passed it. Not because you were perfect, but because you were willing. Obedience is not just about rules, it's about readiness. The ones who are ready for the next dimension are those who can obey before it makes sense. Noah built an ark with no rain in sight. Abraham left home, not knowing where he was going. Mary said yes to an assignment that risked her life and reputation. And Jesus obeyed unto the even death on a cross. And you, chosen one, have obeyed, even when the world said, be logical. You've obeyed through delay, through confusion, through grief. And that obedience has positioned you for release. This is not manipulation, it's multiplication. What you surrendered will now yield fruit that multiplies. It was declared in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2, when you walk through fire, you will not be burned. You walked through fire, and you obeyed through the flames. Now, the waters of release are rising, quietly at first, then with a flood, and all of it flows from that simple, costly, sacred, yes, chosen one. The final unveiling has begun. This is not a new word, it's the fulfillment of every word spoken over you in secret. It's not a fresh college, it's the revealing of what was always within you. The layers are being pulled back. The coverings are being lifted. The time of hiding is over. The time of becoming is here. You were never meant to stay invisible. Heaven did not forge you in fire just to let your purpose fade into the background. The pain you carried, the silence you survived, the strength you built it was all for this unveiling. Not a grand performance, but a divine emergence. The kind of unveiling that shifts atmospheres without a spotlight. This is your Esther moment. Your Joseph hour. Esther, hidden in the palace until the decree demanded her voice. Joseph, buried in a prison until Pharaoh's dream unlocked his gift. You too have been hidden, not because you were unworthy, but because you were unready. And now, heaven says you're ready, not because of your ability, but because of your surrender. Everything you need is already inside you. The wisdom, the fire, the compassion, the discernment. You've been trying to earn what God has already planted. And now, He's watering it with divine timing. The doors that once ignored you will open not because of who you know, but because of who you carry. The world is not ready for who you truly are, but heaven is. You've been walking with power others couldn't see, holding visions others didn't understand, carrying a weight that wasn't visible but was deeply felt. And now, God is placing you where that weight will matter, where your voice will carry, where your obedience will bear visible fruit. The unveiling doesn't mean for meat, means function. It means your gifts will no longer collect dust in silence. It means your prayers will start moving things in public spaces. It means your heart humbled by processes ready to carry what would have crushed you last year. You are not stepping into a spotlight. You are stepping into divine alignment. You will recognize yourself more clearly in the coming days, not because you've changed, but because the veil has lifted. You'll look in the mirror and see the warrior that has always been there. You'll speak and hear the authority heaven placed in your voice. You'll walk into rooms and know you belong not from pride, but from purpose. This unveiling will shock those who never took the time to look deeper. Some will say, "Where did this come from?" But it didn't come suddenly. It came through sacrifice, through seasons of building altars, not platforms, through years of faithfulness when there was no audience, through depths of devotion that forged character in silence. You're not just being seen, you're being sent to places your heart has longed for, sent to people who've been crying for the light you carry, sent with messages that will pierce through confusion and pull souls out of slumber. Your life will now speak where your words once struggled. This unveiling isn't about being known, it's about being effective, because you've counted the cost. You've endured the empty rooms. You've walked through doors no one else saw. And now, what's inside of you is too powerful to remain concealed. The final veil is lifting not to glorify you, but to glorify God through you. Chosen one, this is your release. This is the moment all of heaven stands in silence, watching as the story begins to shift. The enemy thought he buried you, but he only planted you. And what's been underground is now pushing through the surface, radiant, rooted, unstoppable. As Paul reminds us in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms. You were always meant to rise, now risen not for show, but for purpose, not for fame, but for fire, not for applause, but for impact, beloved, the chosen one. Take a breath. Let every word that was spoken settle deep into your spirit. You didn't just hear a message, you received a mantle. You didn't just read text, you encountered a turning point. This was not entertainment. This was engagement with destiny. You are not the same. You cannot go back to shrinking, doubting, or dimming your light. The veil has been lifted. You have been confirmed, affirmed, and commissioned. Now, walk it out. Speak differently. Think differently. Move differently. Heaven has announced your arrival now. The earth must respond. Yes. The warfare will increase. Yes. The weight will feel heavier. But now you know who you are. Now you know why the battle has been so fierce. And now you know what you carry. Guard it. Steward it. Release it. This message was hidden from the world until now because you were hidden. But as the word found you, it also revealed you. This was your unveiling. This was your confirmation. This was your reminder that you are not just chosen, you are crowned. So take your place. Own your calling. Walk in the fire that cannot be quenched. And if this resonated with you, if it confirmed what heaven has been whispering in the quiet, then don't let it stop here. Like this word, share it with someone else carrying silent purpose. Subscribe so you stay aligned with future releases. And if you feel led, sow into what God is doing here. You're not just giving, you're activating agreement with what heaven is unlocking. You are God's chosen one. And this message found you right on time. Comment below, I am crowned. Because you are, and you always have been,